At a recent neighborhood party, we were joking about my spouse, but then he stood up and declared our relationship was over. Hello, Reddit. I'm using a temporary account because this situation is deeply humiliating, and since my husband follows my main account, I don't want him to discover I'm sharing this. I'm at a loss in this dire situation. My name is Lisa, I'm 24, and my husband, Jack, is 26. We've been married for 3 years and have known each other since college. I never thought things would end up like this. Looking back, it all stemmed from misunderstandings and my careless actions. Forgive me if this seems disjointed, I'm still heartbroken and confused. Jack is an introvert, whereas I've always been the outgoing one. I love hosting parties and surrounding myself with people, while Jack prefers quiet evenings at home with a book or a movie. Despite his personality, he's always supported my social life, even though it's not his preference. But I pushed things too far, and now I regret everything. To provide some background, Jack has always been a bit of a people pleaser. I dislike using that term, but it fits. He consistently went out of his way to ensure I was happy, doing everything possible to make our relationship thrive. I underestimated him because of this, assuming he'd never leave me, that he loved me too much to stand his ground. Jack is the kind of man who would wake up early to grab my favorite coffee, cancel his plans to comfort me when I felt down, and always prioritize my needs. He was caring, attentive, and eager to please. Over time, I took him for granted. I didn't recognize how much effort he was putting into our relationship or how my behavior was affecting him. I started pulling away emotionally, and Jack, in an effort to keep me happy, agreed to my decision to become a stay-at-home wife, even though we don't have kids. He didn't hesitate, but I began slacking off, doing less around the house and expecting him to handle everything. After long days at work, he'd come home to a messy house and no dinner, yet he never complained, he'd just start cleaning and cooking. I began to see his accommodating nature as weakness. I resented him for being so compliant, wanting someone who could challenge me rather than always give in to my demands. I started spending more time with friends and having fun while Jack stayed home. Behind his back, I made jokes about him, which my friends encouraged. They said I deserved someone better, someone who could match my energy. The more I distanced myself, the harder Jack tried to hold on to our relationship. He surprised me with gifts, planned romantic dinners, and spoke of our future, but I had already checked out emotionally. I no longer wanted someone who idolized me, I craved passion and excitement. Our relationship turned into a cycle, Jack would try to please me, and I'd push him away. I began flirting with other men, enjoying the attention. Jack noticed but said nothing, continuing his efforts to win me back as if his love alone could fix everything. As I lost respect for Jack, so did our friends. It wasn't just the jokes I made about him, it was how I treated him publicly, dismissing him during conversations or ignoring him altogether. Our friends followed my lead, teasing him about being too accommodating or whipped. But Jack, always the peacemaker, laughed it off, never revealing how much it hurt. I saw the flicker of pain in his eyes, but he masked it with a smile, saying he was just happy that I was happy. I failed to see how deeply this was impacting him and eroding his self-worth. Jack's few close friends began distancing themselves from him, puzzled as to why he tolerated my behavior. They told him he deserved better and needed to stand up for himself, but Jack always defended me. He explained that I was just going through a phase and that he loved me no matter what. The more he defended me, the weaker he seemed, and the less respect we had for him. I started spending time with people who encouraged my behavior, telling me I could do better and should find someone on my level. Meanwhile, Jack withdrew even further, focusing heavily on his work, taking on extra projects and longer hours. He became quieter and avoided social events. When we attended gatherings, he stayed in the background, letting me take center stage. Looking back, I realize how unfair I was to Jack. He was a kind, loving partner, and I took him for granted. My insecurities and constant need for validation drove a wedge between us, pushing away the one person who loved me unconditionally. There were countless moments where I disrespected him, and since I feel the need to vent, I'll share a few examples. Apologies in advance if this gets long. The issues started months before the neighborhood party, around the time I reconnected with some old college friends who had recently moved nearby. They were carefree and fun, living the kind of life I thought I wanted. One Friday, my friend Tina invited me out for a girls' night. What was supposed to be a simple dinner turned into a night of bar hopping and dancing. Jack, ever the supportive husband, encouraged me to go out and have fun. He even handed me extra money for expenses, which I accepted without hesitation. That night, for the first time, I openly mocked Jack in front of my friends. Fueled by alcohol, I joked about how he did everything for me, letting me be a stay-at-home wife without kids and never complaining. Tina and the others laughed and encouraged me, and I soaked up the attention. The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a sense of guilt. Jack, as usual, made me breakfast and asked how my night went. I gave him a vague response, avoiding the details. I noticed the concern in his eyes, but he didn't press for more information. Instead, he told me he was glad I had fun and that he loved me. My guilt quickly turned to irritation, and I brushed him off. Over the following weeks, I went out more often, ignoring Jack's growing weariness. He continued supporting me, but our conversations grew brief, and tension built between us. I could sense his disappointment, but I ignored it, convinced he'd always stay by my side. This pattern continued, culminating in the events leading up to the neighborhood party. It was then that everything fell apart. I started boasting, and my friends laughed, quickly turning it into jokes about how whipped Jack was and how I had him completely under control. Jack wasn't far away, and I noticed him listening to everything. Instead of feeling proud, I felt a pang of shame. But my desire to impress my friends outweighed my guilt. I joined in the laughter, making even more jokes at Jack's expense. That evening, when we got home, Jack didn't utter a word. He went straight to bed, leaving me sitting alone in the living room. I stayed there for hours, torn between anger and regret. Deep down, I knew I had gone too far, but I didn't have the faintest idea how to fix it. I convinced myself that, like every other time, things would eventually smooth over, and Jack would forgive me. I couldn't have known that the barbecue would be the breaking point. The neighborhood party was the catalyst. It was a regular community gathering, a way to connect, relax, and enjoy each other's company. Our tight-knit area held these events often, so it felt like just another casual evening. Jack, as always, was at the grill, doing his part, while I mingled with my friends. After a few drinks, the conversation inevitably shifted to our husbands, and Jack became the focus. My friends already knew how devoted Jack was to me, and they found it amusing. Someone commented on how fortunate I was to have a husband who would do anything for me. Feeling a little tipsy, I laughed and joked about how Jack never said no to me, how he was always eager to fulfill my requests, and how, at times, he seemed to lack a backbone. The teasing escalated, with my friends piling on jokes about how under the thumb Jack was. Then came the silence. I turned around and saw Jack standing there, his face pale and expressionless. He had heard it all. Jack walked over to our table, fixed his eyes on me, and simply said we needed to talk. Surprised, I followed him. Although the party continued, I could feel the weight of everyone's stares. Jack's words hit me like a ton of bricks. He said he was done. At first, I thought he was joking, but there was no trace of humor in his face. He said he was tired of the constant disrespect, both from me and others. Jack announced he was leaving and wouldn't be coming back to our home. He added that my belongings would be on the porch. Then, without waiting for a response, he walked out. I stood there in stunned silence, the weight of everyone's eyes boring into me. Even if they hadn't caught our words, Jack's expression and the abrupt way he left made it clear something significant had happened. I rushed after him, but by the time I reached the house, Jack was already packing up my things. I pleaded, cried, and tried every tactic that had worked before to sway him. But Jack had shut down completely. He wouldn't even look at me, let alone listen. He just kept packing, his determination unshakable. When he was done, he tossed my things onto the porch and told me to leave. Refusing to go, I begged him to reconsider. But then Jack threatened to call the police, and I knew he meant it. Defeated, I gathered what I could and left, the humiliating eyes of our neighbors watching from behind curtains and windows. Even my so-called friends didn't step in to offer help or comfort. I walked down the street with tears streaming down my face, my mind racing, trying to process the gravity of what had just unfolded. For so long, I had underestimated Jack, never believing he would stand up for himself like this. I ended up in a nearby park, still in shock, and called my dad to pick me up. My father arrived quickly, disappointment etched on his face. Still, he brought me back home. I've been staying at my parents' house for a few days now, and I feel utterly lost. I've tried calling Jack, texting him, but he won't respond. I don't know what to do anymore. This situation is so much worse than I anticipated. I recognize how badly I've messed up, but it feels like everyone is rubbing it in. To those who have offered kind advice, thank you. Your words mean more than you know. But for those who came here just to judge or criticize, I'm already living with the consequences. I don't need more negativity. For those asking, no, I don't have a job. I mentioned this in my earlier post, so I don't understand why people keep bringing it up. And no, my relationship isn't over, not in my heart, at least. I'm holding on to hope that we can work things out, though it feels like a long shot. For now, I'm trying to take things one day at a time. I want to show Jack that I can change, even though I know it won't be easy. If anyone has genuine advice on how to make amends, I'd really appreciate it.